Hi, and welcome to Journey Forward with Jory Rose, where you will gain insights, tools, and inspiration to get unstuck and live your best life. Jory is a licensed marriage and family therapist with a passion for helping people cultivate awareness and authenticity so they can show up fully in all aspects of their life. And now, here's Jory.
Hey there, it's Jory. Before we jump into this episode with Dr. Ish Major, which by the way, I am so excited to be finally sharing. We recorded this a few months ago and it is such a fantastic conversation. And of course, all about relationships. So if you're listening to this, my guess is that you're curious how to have healthier, more connected, more aligned, more fulfilling, more satisfying relationships. I am super excited that my partner, John, and I are launching a monthly masterclass series on the AWARE method, which is practices and tools to be in aligned, authentic, and connected relationships with yourself and others. If you are in a partnership that just isn't flowing the way you like, if you're in a relationship that leaves you feeling drained, unsatisfied, and disconnected, I invite you to check out the link in the bio so you can see all of the different months of what we're going to be covering in this monthly masterclass series. You can sign up for the whole year and save, or you can sign up for the months that most speak to you, even though all the information is interconnected. So with that, I hope you enjoy this episode. And as always, take care and be well. Hey everyone, welcome back to Journey Forward with Jory Rose. I am so excited to talk with my guest today, Dr. Ish Major, who I was fortunate enough to see him speak on stage at a conference in Vancouver in the spring and was so inspired by his storytelling, the work that he does, the various amounts of relational work that he does that I just thought, I want to talk further with him. So Ish, thank you so much for being here. Please introduce yourself and share with our listeners, what's been your journey? How did you get to where you are and the magic that you're bringing not only to your own life, but to all of the people that you work with?
Yeah, well, thanks so much for having me. Yeah, Vancouver was a very cool, very special time. Just the folks I got to work with and the folks like you I got to meet in that area. Yeah, I'll keep those memories with me. But I'm Dr. Ish Major, board certified psychiatrist. I specialize in women, children, families, relationships, obviously, and also detox, which seems like an odd pairing, right? Kind of seems like French fries and ice cream, or right, or pickles and peanut butter. But when you think about it, it's really not. So when it comes to substance use and trying to get sober, or relationships and trying to get connected, the one thing that all of those have in common is pain, right? It's painful doing that.
Yeah.
So whether it's a toxic chemical in your body or a toxic person or toxic voice in your head, I help people get rid of the pain.
Well, that's a very simple statement for a very complex practice. How did you get to this being the work that you do?
Yeah, I think, Joy, it's like we all teach the thing we need the most,
Yeah. Yes, we do.
Right? We do. And I'm no different. And any expert who's out there trying to help folks is no different. And, the relationships are something I've always struggled with, and it's always kicked my butt, to this day. It's a constant struggle. And so I think for me, if I can show up and show somebody else how to do it, and right, and see some joy and some happiness in their success, then it helps me believe a little bit more that it's possible for me.
I love that authenticity, because it's easy to believe that, quote, the experts in our field need to have it all figured out. And let's just call bullshit on that and say, look, just because I have the tools or the training or the education or the background or the experience does not mean I'm an expert at applying it or integrating it, or that I am free from my own trauma and pain before I had these tools, right?
Right. Exactly. And that's the authentic part. And I think that part resonates with folks, so nobody's attracted to perfection.
No,
right? There's nothing that resonates with perfection, right? There's nothing about perfection that resonates, not anymore. Maybe we used to be able to get away with it, right? It was like and aspire to it. But I think we're all we're also superficially connected, whether it's online or in life now. We can kind of, right, we can see the rough spots, and we kind of gravitate towards the folks who are not afraid to show that.
Yeah, that vulnerability breeds connection. As a therapist, I break down that wall all the time. My clients end up learning so much about me because I feel it's inauthentic to have this one-sided relationship that's supposed to model healthy relationship. Like, it doesn't make any intuitive sense to me.
Yep.
So I'm not there gratuitously telling about my life and my clients paying me. It's more of about, hey, I can relate. When I went through something similar, here's the tools that I use. Here's how it looks like in practice.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, wait, you mean I'm not the only one?
Right. It just, anything you can do to help somebody feel a little bit less alone than whatever else happens in that session or with that interaction, you've done the job, because that's the whole point, right? We show up, we get scared because we feel alone. Am I the only one who's not doing it right? You know? And anything you can do to help somebody feel a little less alone, then I think that's the job. To me, that's the job.
So what was it about relationships and addiction? As you said, two what seem like polar opposites. Mm-hmm. How have you found the way to bridge that in your work?
Yeah.
As you said, pain is the connection point, but so what does that look like in practice for you?
Pain points connection. So ultimately so if you think about drugs, right? And you think about all the drugs of choice that people use, whether it's alcohol or cigarettes or marijuana or something that's going to take you up, whether it's cocaine or some kind of amphetamine or something that's going to bring you down, like an opiate or heroin or a benzo. Everybody takes it for the same reason, right? We take it because we want to feel different. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to wait until I do therapy for 6 months to feel different, right? Because I don't know if I can stand suffering for another 6 months, because life has been hard. I want to feel different today. Right now. Within the next hour, please.
Yes, right? Is that possible?
Right? Because this is right. We don't have the attention span anymore. We don't have to, right? Amazon can literally have something. If I order it tonight, it'll be here by 8 o'clock in the morning. Right?
Sometimes if you order the morning, it's that afternoon.
Sometimes if you're in the right area, it'll be there that afternoon. We don't, right? So now we don't want to wait for these things. So that's why you do drugs, right? You do drugs because you don't like the way you felt when you woke up that morning and you're trying to feel different, right? Regardless of whether it's the pain in your body, whether it's an emotional pain. And so when I start to peel back the layers with my opiate patients, and it's like, okay, well, what's the reason here? There's always a theme of relationship unlovability, right? There's some pain there. It may be with your current person. It may be with the first persons who were supposed to love you, with mom or dad, who didn't, and who taught you that maybe you were unlovable and maybe you don't deserve to have your needs met, right? All those things we internalize as kids, right? That we hook up in our brains that let us know that who we are isn't enough to go out here and ask for some love and get it back. And there's nothing extra we got to do. So it all eventually, once we get past the drug of choice, we always end up talking about relationships. And so it's the thing that helps us know life matters. It's the thing that makes life juicy.
Yeah.
If you've got all the money in the world, I'm talking Amazon money, Netflix money, but you don't have anybody to share that with who you love and they love you back, and you're going to say life is pretty empty, right? Studies.
What's it all worth?
Right? Studies show this. But if you've got a bicycle and you live in a box, but you share that box with the person who just loves you like nobody else and you love them back, y'all will redecorate that box every 2 years and just love it.
Yeah.
Right? Because that's the thing that matters, So that's once I figured that part out, I was like, okay, this is the thing that's really important. And if you can get that part right, then life can be good. You can get some joy out of that.
Absolutely. It makes me think of Dr. Gabor Mate's work, who was an expert in addiction and then really has recognized that we can't treat the addiction until we're understanding the trauma that has led to the addiction. Right. And what's at the root of trauma, right? Abandonment.
Right.
Exactly. Unmet expectations, that that feeling of feeling unlovable or unworthiness. And then we add layers into that, transgenerational trauma, epigenetics, right? I mean, it's just where do we begin?
every life experience, every teacher who didn't call on you when you raised your hand, every person who didn't return your love letter when you were in the fourth grade, right? The person who turned you down at the prom, the promotion you didn't get, the person who cut you off in traffic. Everything, our brain is constantly looking for evidence to make our stories true. And if our story is who I am isn't significant or worthy or have value, then everything that happens, even glances up against that, it just confirms that story for us. But here's the interesting thing about opiates, what most folks don't realize. So when somebody's in withdrawal, right, you've been using, now you stop automatic, and now you're in withdrawal. And you've got those typical withdrawal symptoms, whether it's runny nose, runny eyes, the muscle aches, the nausea, the vomiting, all of that good stuff. The receptor that's sitting empty in your brain that's calling for the opiates is the exact same receptor in your brain that tells you when you're lonely. And so when we look at folks and say, well, why can't you stop their pain pills? Why is it so hard? It's heroin. Why is it so hard? Well, it's hard because when that receptor is empty, it tells you that you are all alone and life doesn't have a whole lot of meaning without that receptor sitting full. And so that's what makes it hard,
Yeah. It's a powerful visual there.
Right? Yeah. Yeah.
So this leads into something that I wanted to ask about, because when I saw you in Vancouver, this was part of your what you shared and prepared in your talk, and it really stuck with me because this is something that I focus a lot on. But you had a really beautiful way of talking about it, and it's your story. What's your story, and where are the lies in your story? So can you share a little bit, maybe perhaps, about what you did in that talk, because this is a really powerful reframe of our own narrative.
Yeah. Well, like I mentioned in Vancouver, I'm a comic book super freak, and every great hero has a great origin story. And you can be no greater than your origin story. And a lot of times the folks who got the biggest monster that they had to beat back, they end up being the most powerful. I was always interested in knowing, how did you get your power, right? Literally, where did your power come from? Whether it's Wonder Woman or whether it was Superman or Batman, how did that happen? And so I really got into the origin stories. And since we're all the same, we're all the superhero in our own life, right? We've all got an origin story.
Yeah.
Whether we're proud of it or whether we're ashamed of it, right? Nobody's all one thing. And so as I started getting older and older and really just started to do some different things in life, achieve different things, go here, go there. I figured out, like, no matter what I did, right? No matter whether I was on top in business or on the bottom, whether I was, in a stable relationship or not, there was always this feeling like, I don't know, something's missing. Something's not quite, it doesn't look like it. It doesn't feel with me like it looks with everybody else. So I really started examining my own origin story, and it became very, very evident when I started doing more television work, because my origin story was, hey, I'm going to be the nice guy. I'm going to be the town doc, and I'm going to be, good old Dr. Major. And we're going to get in there and we're going to do some stuff and it's going to be fine. And you come on in here today. And, and once I started doing the TV work, it was like, okay, but this actually feels a little more authentic. This feels a little more genuine. I can kind of be big and bold and gregarious, which is more in line with my, with who I know myself to
you
be.
Can dress really fabulous while giving your fabulous message and not have to be buttoned up behind the doctor's coat.
Right. I don't have to, I can have a deep voice. It's okay. I don't have to talk like, this, like this guy and like point, that's right, whatever that is. And so for me, it started causing anxiety. And whenever it was time to go into the hospital and be that other guy, Dr. Major, started causing anxiety, and literally was having panic attacks driving to the hospital to see patients or driving to the clinic to see patients. And so I figured out, okay, there's some imposter syndrome happening here, because the guy who's in the room is pretending to be somebody else, who somebody else wants them to be. And that doesn't match up with my origin story, right? But the guy on camera, okay, that guy seems to be a little bit more in line, right? He's a little more casual. He's got on a sweater. He pushes up the sleeves, right? And he's just showing up and being him. And once I was able to integrate those two and kind of make that line up with my origin story, right? Because my story was, hey, okay, I'm a skinny Black kid from South Carolina, grew up poor, and and so who would ever want to listen to me, right? What do I ever have that would be worth sharing with anybody, right? In this small town, much less across the country, across the world even. And so that was a part of my origin story, even though I had a deep, deep secret desire to do TV ever since I was like a kid. Pretending I'm sick, staying home from school to watch Phil Donahue. It was like, that was my jam, you know? And God forbid if he had somebody interesting on the next day, because that means I would have to pretend to be sick again the next day.
Damn promotions of those commercials. You lost a whole week of school.
Right. He had me locked in. And so I knew there was something I wanted to do, but my origin story was, okay, poor Black South Carolina, don't know anybody who's doing what you're doing. Why would anybody, right? What do you have of value that's worth sharing? Because nobody around you does. And so why would anybody want to listen? So it just really does a number on what I thought I had to share. And so I really had to recalibrate that before I was able to actually find the courage to get out there and start sharing stuff.
Yeah, it's huge. And I love that you share all that, because in my own life, I've gotten so over-attached to my own story in a way that does not serve me in the present, because it's preventing me from being anything but what that story was.
Right.
And I used to have the belief that, well, if someone really knew me, it would know these things about me. And I would almost introduce myself with the same script. And my script went something like, hi, my name is Jory. I am married, well, now divorced, but married to my high school sweetheart who I was with since I was 13. I used to be super overweight. My mom's parents got killed in a car accident when my mom was 16. She was the sole survivor, and my dad committed suicide when I was 10. Like, that was me. And I thought, if you really knew me, you would know like those 5 facts that all happened under age 13. That was my story. And as I held on to that tightly as my story, it limited me from being anything but that story. And then to like look at the holes in the story. What's the lie in my story? Well, the lie was I'm not all of those things. I had the realization, oh, wait a minute. My mom's parents' car accident, that was their trauma, not mine. It was my mom's trauma who was in the accident. I have implications of that, but it wasn't my trauma. My dad's suicide, that was his story. That wasn't my story. But like, to then look for the confirmation bias of all the things that I wasn't worthy of, because look where I came from.
Yeah. Right.
Powerful.
It is. And so to have those types of things happen before you even hit full puberty, right? It can teach you some really wrong things about how love is supposed to work.
Oh, you're telling me, where were you 20 years ago, Ish? Thanks.
Right? Because that clearly states that the people who love you don't stick around. Right? No matter what.
Session over. Thanks, guys, for joining in.
Right? That's the meaning you could take. Okay, well, this thing is very fragile, and I shouldn't get attached to folks, because the folks who are supposed to love me, I can't count on them to stick around, because they could leave here one day and go on the next, right? And then as a child, you internalize that. So, okay, maybe if I lost weight, they would have still been here. Maybe if I got more A's or got better grades, right? Maybe if I was cuter, maybe if I was taller, maybe if I was better at sports, all of these things that our child mind links up to think of that we can do to maintain some control in a chaotic world that makes no sense to us, right? And we carry those things with us everywhere, like you said, I would introduce myself as that. It sticks.
Yeah, and it's scary, because then I'll ask clients, what's your story? And then I will say, how is it serving you to hold on to this? And they're like, well, it's not. Okay, but there's a secondary benefit you're gaining as a result of holding so tightly onto this narrow belief system about yourself. So what is that? Well, and I know for me, it was, if I'm no longer holding on to that story, wait, shit, who am I?
Exactly.
And if I don't know who I am, well, then what?
Right.
And what if I'm an imposter? What if I'm inauthentic? What if I don't have the evidence to support the belief of who I want to be?
Right. Right. And, oh my God, what if it's true?
Yeah.
Right? Because we've all got this thing we're pretending not to know about ourselves, right? The thing that we don't want anybody to ever see, that we're just terrified of it actually being true. And we fight like heck to make sure it's not. But what if it is? right?
Yeah.
And so it takes courage to be able to step outside of that story, right, and become the watcher and say, okay, this is 13-year-old Joy, and she's telling that story. I wonder what's happening there with her. Well, that's interesting, right? And then just being able to get that separation, and look at her telling that story and understanding what she's feeling. Now it helps you understand and get some control over it, and it helps you not identify with it. And with that moment, that split second of unidentification, now you're able to expand the narrative.
And create a new one.
Right. And see what else it could be. Exactly. And see what else it could be. Right. Yeah.
So when you're dealing with working with helping people in their relationships, how much is this the core of what you're doing to work with? Because I think this is really depth level work that many people don't even want to access, because like you said, they just want to get out of the pain.
Right.
And some of this takes a lot of work, and it's actual work that might get messy and painful. And I mean, I just went through a breakup and a reconciliation that I can see now was a necessary part of my ego death.
Yeah.
Right. It was a complete reprogramming of my belief systems, because ultimately a lot of those old narratives were showing up in my partnership that didn't need to apply now at 45 years old, and was getting in the way of true, authentic connection.
Right. Yeah, I think, and you know this, I'm sure you found this to be true. If a couple comes to you, like they come to me, usually they want us to pick a side and tell the other one how wrong they are. Right? Well, if you just did this, they wouldn't be in so much pain. If you stop doing that, it could be better. And that's the easy fix, right? That's the easy fix.
Right.
And that's the untrue. That's the part that's not true, right? And so what I usually do is I come in and I get the story from both of them at the same time. I'm like, okay, that's great. Now we're going to go to our separate corners, and you and I are going to chat alone, and you and I are going to chat alone, because ultimately, it takes two people to be in a relationship where folks aren't happy, right? And it's always the person who looks like they're nice and soft and compliant on the surface. That's usually the person who needs the most work in that dynamic, right? I know this because that was me, right? I was a nice guy. I did everything right. I'm the caretaker. I'm breaking my back to make sure you're happy. I'm focusing everything on your needs. How dare you not meet mine, even though I never had the courage to ask.
Man, that just hit home. Yeah.
Right? And so I think once you form that therapeutic alliance and they've given you permission to be honest, and you can have that conversation, then folks are like, oh yeah, you know what? Actually, let's press pause on the couples counseling and let's do a little bit more of this, right? Because it's the thing that's been showing up in every relationship since you've been having them. Hey, it's kind of okay, but not really all the way fulfilling. I'm not really sure why, right? Could it really be that there's no perfect person out there for me? Well, no, it's not that. It's the thing that you're looking to fill from the outside in, as opposed to getting it filled from the inside out, right? You've got everything you need to be happy. You just got to get in touch with that and stop bullshitting yourself about that story you're telling yourself about why you don't have it.
Absolutely. One of the things I tell my clients is you can't receive what you don't believe.
Yep.
So it's a cliche and 100% true. The work has to start internally, because if I'm supporting my partner and giving him all this gratitude and appreciation and accolades, or even just acknowledging, wow, thank you for being such a great partner, but he thinks he doesn't feel worthy, then no matter what I say to build him up to be authentic and honest, if he doesn't believe it within himself, there's no way he can receive what I'm giving. Never.
And it's going to frustrate you to no end. Because you're like, why? Why can I not make this person happy? What? No matter, right? I did everything I could, right? I did my hair, I got my makeup, I look good, I smell good, I'm right. I do all these things, right? And they still aren't happy. And then you come to that realization, and anybody who's now in an authentic relationship has had that realization, which is, oh my God, I'm not responsible for their happiness, am I?
Not a huge, huge relief.
That's the woosah moment.
Yes.
Right. And it's like, Oh, you mean it wasn't me this whole time? Okay, cool, right? I'm here, right? It's like I talk about being the difference between being on a journey and being in an adventure. Everybody's like, oh, me and my partner, we're on this journey together. I'm like, no, actually, you're not, right? The journey is yours, right? Your journey is a part of that story you were talking about abandonment with your grandfolks and your dad, right? That is your journey. That is the cross you bear in this life. And your journey is all about understanding what that meant and what it didn't mean in terms of your level of lovability and your ability to find some joy in these moments that we call life, right? Mm-hmm. Now, if we're lucky, we can find somebody to share this adventure with, though, right? That's the thing you share with somebody else.
I love that.
Right? With your best girlfriend, your best friend, your best partner, your best lover, we can share this adventure, right? And I can check out you and your journey and like, oh, that's interesting. That's cool. Let me know if you need any help with that. I'm more than happy to. And you can let them see a little bit of your journey, right? But at no point is it a journey together. No, we're sharing this adventure, right? And if we're lucky, they let us get a glimpse of their journey, right?
I love that distinction, Ish. Right? I think that's really beautiful because I know, especially in my own experience, because of what you named so clearly of, the fear of someone can always leave, right? Can lead to codependency, a lot of insecurity, and a belief that we have to be so aligned all the time to be in good partnership or to be in connection, and not having had many role models to demonstrate that. It's easy to believe if we're not like tightly connected all the time, then are we really good partners? Right. And in reality, it's supposed to, I think, this be interweaving mix of together apart, but with that security that during those moments apart, that we're not going anywhere.
Right. The moments apart are useful. They teach you about yourself. They help you appreciate the moments together. And the moments apart don't mean that there have to be moments alone, right?
Right.
You can still be connected.
Right. And that's a really good, practice for many couples of the difference between when is it a moment for self-regulation and when is it a moment for co-regulation. Right. And ideally our partner can always be there to co-regulate us, and it's not also their job. Right. I've got to have the tools to co-regulate myself, and my partner, due to his avoidant or anxious attachment style, doesn't have the ability to be present for me, and I can't personalize that. It's just, that's his nervous system needing space and distance to feel safe. Right. Can I respect that and not disrupt his journey from what my needs are? Because very rarely is everyone's needs going to be the same. And then we think, well, we don't love me because we don't have the same needs, right? But that's the story we're telling ourselves.
Right, because that's what we've been taught, right? Every romantic comedy we've ever seen, every romantic book we've ever read, it matches, right? Oh, it's amazing and it's cute and it's adorable, but it's just not how life works. It's not realistic. And how boring would that be if that were the case, right? You just right? We need polarity. We need opposites. We need to be able to learn something from our partner and continue to be curious about this whole thing. So yeah.
And it's like Esther Perel says, we need the distance for novelty too, because
right.
Monogamous relationships have some monotony to it. So we need to be able to find novelty in our own journey to bring the adventure to our partnership.
We need some adventure. We need some spice. We need some uncertainty. We got to have that. It's interesting. The first 10 years of my practice, I did all kids all day long, trained at a big center for autism. And so we would teach them literally how to communicate from like three-year-olds all the way up through puberty. And it's a constant teaching them how to communicate what's happening when they're scared, when they're agitated, when they're happy, when they're sad, and using those words. And we would call it teaching them how to self-soothe in those moments, right?
Right.
And it directly applies to adult relationships. Folks would come in, I'm like, listen, right? You're making them responsible for soothing you. And that's soothing you isn't their responsibility. Now, if they choose to do something and it helps, great, that's a bonus. But soothing you at no point in this journey is their sole responsibility, because trust me, 90% of what they're doing right here, sitting on this couch next to you, is trying to soothe themselves in this moment. And
Yeah.
nobody's ever going to have that extra bandwidth to do both, not consistently. And so it's so interesting, especially with the more masculine person in that dynamic. I would tell them the same thing I would end up telling my 3-year-old autistic kids. Hey, use your words. Use your
Mm-hmm.
words. There's a word for what you're feeling, and you're scared to say it, or you can't identify it. So let's name some things. I believe you got to name it to tame it. So let's name what you're feeling, right? Am I angry? Am I disappointed? Am I dejected? Am I feeling rejected? And then we break it all down to those 4 things that we only ever feel. Only 4 true emotions: happy, sad, scared, surprised. What are you? Because it ain't nothing else outside of those 4 things. And if you think it is, you're lying to yourself. Either you're happy about something, you're sad about something, you're scared to death about it, or something really surprised you.
Yeah, it's underlying it. I always say there's always an emotion driving a behavior. Yep. Always. And I use that in my parenting work with my clients, but I quite often bring the similar theories and frameworks into partnerships as I do into parenting, because it's really the same thing. One's acting out in a tantrum, and you're getting into hierarchical battle of who's going to be heard, because we all just want to be seen, heard, and validated. And someone's going to say, I'm putting you on timeout, which is only going to lead to greater resistance and more fighting. It never works, by the way. So there's always an emotion driving a behavior, but we too often focus on the behaviors and we miss the opportunity for the empathic connection when we have the curiosity to pause with compassion and say, wow, what's going on under there?
Right.
Because if you can get to the emotion, the negative behavior is not going to need to happen, because now we feel seen and heard. And now we're like, well, why bother yelling if you understand that I was really just embarrassed or hurt by what you just did?
Right. So go back to what you just said. Now they feel seen and heard because you had that moment where you recognize the emotion, right? And in that moment, if you're able to show up with some true empathy, right?
Yeah.
Not sympathy. No. Right? No, that sympathy doesn't help me feel better. You're feeling bad for me. Yeah, okay, get out of here. I don't want that. That doesn't help me. You feeling it with me, right? It's like you can walk into this dark room where I am, and true empathy says you don't feel compelled to turn the lights on.
Yeah.
You're comfortable with your own darkness. You can sit here right next to me, and it can be fine. My mom, from big Gullah culture, down south, and so they had all these traditions and all these, passing down of the quilts and all this kind of stuff. So one of the things, and I was raised by 5 sisters and 8 aunts, and so our house was like the quilting bee hub, right? So there would be this really cool stories floating around. I'm like a little kid getting in everybody's way. But one of the things they would do whenever a family had a trauma in our little tiny little town, our little farm town of like 250 people, one of the elder women in the room would say, hey, I'm gonna go over and just sit with them. Not gonna fix anything. Not going over to try to make anybody feel better. But yeah, they just, husband just passed or somebody's sick. I'm just gonna go sit. And it's so powerful when you think about that, right? Yeah, I'm just going to sit with them and let them know they're not alone. I don't know how to fix it. Maybe there's nothing to fix, because this is just a part of things that happen in life. We get sad and disappointed when things don't turn out how we thought.
Yeah.
But that's true empathy, right? I'm going to sit with you in that moment. You look sad, and I bet that sucks. And now the thing you said about, they felt seen, they felt heard, that moment of empathy now helps them feel understood.
Yeah.
And if you help me feel seen, heard, and understood, Jory, I am never going to want to leave you ever in life.
Yeah.
You are my person, right?
Yes.
That's it. Yeah.
Well, and that sitting with it, it's like in Judaism, the tradition of sitting shiva when someone dies. It's just you give yourself the space to sit, and you have people just come sit with you. But it's more powerful. In the work you do and the work I do, it feels like we have to have these grand major things to break through. And really the tools are more simple than we realize. We're making it harder than it is, people. Really, it's quite simple. But I have a quick funny story with the sit with it things. When my daughter was young, we used to do a lot of road trips between Northern California and SoCal. And we would, it's about 5-6 hour drive. And she was about 3 years old at the time. And she was out of a car seat, but she was in a booster. And inevitably we'd be like 45 minutes from home when her capacity to be in her booster was like done. And she would start to get frustrated, and her language, because she was a little girl, wasn't always spot on. So the way she said things were cute. And she would say, instead of saying, I can't stand it anymore, she would say, Mommy, I can't stand with it anymore. And so I would say, well, then, love, you just got to sit with it.
There you go.
And it was like literal and figurative. Like, okay, sit your little tush down, because you're buckled in. So like, sit down.
Right.
But like, you just got to sit with it.
Just got to sit with it. Just got to sit with it. And you're going to learn something, right? The longer you sit with it, you learn that the thing that you were really worried about the most, which is, I'm not going to have enough of what I need to be okay. And if I'm not okay long enough, then I might die. The longer you sit with it, the more you realize that that's not true, right? It
feels true, but it's not true.
It feels true, but it's not. You're not going to die. You're just not, right? That's because that's not how your body works. And even though it may be miserable and you may be suffering, it doesn't brush up against the things that you're fearing that may be true about you, which is, maybe I deserve it. Maybe this is all that there is, right? Maybe there isn't anymore. And so that's why it's so hard, right? Because nobody wants to walk into that room and can have that conversation with themselves. That's a hard thing to do.
And that might be their pattern, their narrative, what they were ashamed and, because someone else wasn't able to sit with their pain, so they transferred it on to someone else. And that's where we get that transgenerational, or recognizing, one of the favorite things I love to do in my work with clients is to reframe their childhood memories and to help them understand. I walk clients through this 4-step journaling process of going to a core memory in which they identified a core belief as a result. Yeah. And I have them start off by writing a love letter to their younger self. And I've got some clients who get really into this, like describing the colors around their bedroom, their comforter, their ice cream, their rainbow sherbet they were eating, like really specific in that moment in time. And just love on that younger self, because just to be that idealized parent. And, and the second one I have them do is write a letter of anger to the person who inflicted this pain. Just get it off your chest, just get angry at your mother for doing whatever X, Y, or Z, your father for X, Y, or Z. The third one is the radical part, is, can you try to get curious of what might have been leading them to treat you that way? Can you have compassion for their pain? Right. Yeah. And that's where the transformation occurs. Like, oh, wait, maybe them yelling at me or quote abandonment, maybe that wasn't about me. Yep. How might you relate differently to that story of abandonment if you now see that maybe they were hurting and they didn't have the skills and the tools or the words or the knowledge or the know-how, or generationally or gender-wise wasn't appropriate because that wasn't their level of consciousness 50 years ago? Like, can we forgive that? And like, let that be okay. And then the fourth one is, can I be grateful for what I learned of who I don't want to be? Yeah. It's powerful, but like that reframe of those core memories and core beliefs were be like identified in a certain moment, like under age 10. And now we've carried that as our story. Like, what if it's not true? Right.
It's more than powerful, because in that moment, if you're able to press pause on those thoughts long enough and ask yourself, what else could it be? It will change your life instantly and forever.
Yes.
It just will. I mean, it's super powerful, right? You're letting them press pause and just wonder. Maybe it's right, maybe it's not. What else could it have been? Yeah. Could it have? And eventually you're going to get to a place where you realize that most of what other folks do ain't got nothing to do with you.
We over personalize.
Right.
Yeah. My fiance, John, during his PhD program, had a professor at Cal who had said, basically, we over personalize 95% of shit. Like, what would happen if you just assumed it wasn't personal? Right. We just like pretend just for an inkling, and then we have a choice of what to believe, because I always say, choose a thought that serves you best. How is it serving you to hold on to the belief that it was your fault?
Right.
What's that going to be the ripple effect, versus if I can choose to believe that maybe it wasn't about me and maybe my mom actually didn't have the skills because she was stuck in trauma, so she wasn't super available. Oh, now I have compassion for her and myself. Now that compassion's a point of connection versus resentment.
Right. And I think, and you may have found this to be true also, but there's comfort in holding on to those narratives, even though they don't serve you. It's the thing we know, right?
Oh,
We've
yeah.
learned how to get through those painful times and those painful days. And so even though this change may be something that's better, more healthy, and eventually may lead me to a better place, I don't trust it. I don't trust it because I don't know how to do that. But I
Well,
know how to sit right here and be sad and get through my sad, not so joyful days. And I can do the thing Tuesday that I did on Monday because my brain knows how to do that. And so we cling to that thing that we think we know, even though we know it's painful, you know?
one of the reasons, and I hate to call anyone out on this, but if I touch a heartstring, I'm doing it with love and compassion. One of the things that I see quite often is why people hold on to that. It's easier. It's harder, but it's easier because you're not having to do the work. It's easier to stay in anger and resentment and externalization. If you start to own it of what am I contributing? You mean now I have to do something different? Because I always thought I'd be happy when everybody else changed.
Right. No, 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 no.
Like,
No mirrors. No mirrors for me, please. No mirrors. I just want to buy the suit. I want the dress. No mirrors, please. I'll trust that it fits. Right? Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's much easier. It's a lot of reason folks stay in relationships too long. Because it's easier. We know how to get through it. Now we have all this because, well, staying for the kids. Once the kids graduate, it's right. We can make up any number of excuses as to why, but yeah, it's you've really got to challenge those beliefs. You know, when you said something earlier about the exercise you do with your clients, that love letter to yourself and challenging those early memories. A lot of folks don't believe me when I say this. My first memory as a child is in my crib, in a blue blanket, crawling out of that crib over the railing, crawling out of my mom's bedroom to the top of our staircase and screaming to the top of my lungs because she wasn't there. Wow. We were in the country. We lived in there's all animals and sick. So we literally had to walk up a lane, and it was, maybe a quarter mile walk and back, to check the mail. She'd gone to check the mail. But didn't come back fast enough for me. Right?
Come on, Mom. I have a time frame of attention I need. Yeah.
Right. And so from that moment on, I'm off to the codependent Mr. Nice Guy races, right? Well, maybe if I didn't have those needs, it would have been better. Maybe, okay, so what can I do now to make it easier for her to be here on time? Okay, so I'll cry less. I'll get hungry less. I won't ask for anything. That I want to make it as easy as possible for this woman who I'm calling mom to show up in my life and throw some love on me. And so, right, but it's so easy to hook up the wrong meaning to a story that, again, had nothing to do with me. Nothing.
No.
But it's powerful. It really is.
And I think it is ubiquitous. It is universal. I don't think there is a human out there that doesn't have some variation of the same story.
We've all got an abandonment story. We've all got it. Oh my God, yours in spades, right? We've all got it. And then as kids, we hook up that meaning. Okay, it must have been something I did because it's happening to me.
Again and again, yeah.
Right. Like you said, and we over-personalize when really, right, as we get older. Now, can you press, what else could it have been? Could it have been that your mom had 6 other kids and really just needed some air? Could it have
maybe
been?
The mailbox was the best part of her day, not because she didn't love all you, but maybe that she did that on purpose.
Right.
Get me the house with the longest walk to the mailbox.
Right. Maybe she just needed some sun. Maybe she really was looking for something to come in. Who knows? But all of these other things it could have been, other than you're not a good enough baby boy to get your mom's attention and love. So yeah, it's a powerful thing.
It's so powerful. And one of my favorite things is awareness. I mean, I teach mindfulness. So of course, that's my one single word answer of how I define mindfulness is just awareness, right? When we can have this greater self-awareness, then we have this ability to have awareness in the moment with our partners. And this is something that John and I, despite having had many challenges, we're actually pretty good at some of the time, if not more of the time. But when triggers would come up, having the awareness to get curious rather than reactive and say, is what's going on actually about what I did? Or is this perhaps about your ex-wife? Is this perhaps about your mother, right? Is this about my ex-husband? Is this about my mother, right? Like, is this really about like this dynamic? Or is this just an attachment to the narrative and belief system you've held from these early wounds that you're now projecting onto me, that you looked at me through this confirmation bias that I didn't do anything, but you still saw me that way?
Right. So listen, you're dropping some gems here, right? So let's let's unpack what you just said though, right? So what you're doing in that moment is you're doing something that takes courage and guts. You're asking for clarity.
Yeah.
Right. You're like, hold on a second. let me just clarify that I'm seeing what I'm seeing is correct, right? Is this about the thing I just said, or could it possibly be something else? And it takes courage because it might be the thing you said, right?
It might be.
Right. It might be that you just wounded your partner in some way that was unintentional, right? And so
then let me own that, right?
Right, exactly. But a lot of folks don't have the capacity to own that, because I had to sit in traffic today, and then the boss said that thing, and then the lunch was wrong, and then I was late getting home, and now we got the kids, and now we got homework, and I don't understand algebra anymore, right? And so I don't have the capacity to take responsibility for helping you feel bad now. I can't do it. But if you can pause and get some clarity there in that moment, wow, now you can ask that question. I wonder what else this could be. Wondering what else it could be.
It's that reframe again.
Right.
And people think reframing is a convenient lens to look through. No, it's not just, I'm just going to look a different way and then believe that. No, it's actually quite helpful, because the lens you're looking through is probably pretty foggy.
It is.
And jaded, and coming from a place of wound and insecurity and unworthiness and fear and anxiety and, all the things.
And it doesn't mean you're messed up because of that. It just means you're human.
Means you're human.
Just means you're human. One of my sisters, FBI, she is constantly talking about how they hammer home how to respond and not react.
Yeah.
Right. She was intelligent, so she literally gathered all of the information possible, and then she would say it in the most calm way. She was like, "Yeah, because we need to make a response. We need to mount a response, not a reaction. Right? Responses have to be informed, right? Which means we have to talk to people about what's happening and get all the information. And then, they have this thing. First of all, FBI has the worst acronyms possible. None of it makes sense. So then, right. So they have this thing called a SHME, right?
I'm so unprofessional.
Right. A SHME is the subject matter expert. This is the person who tells you what we know and what we don't know. And then they tell you the part that's unknowable, but this may be a way for us to figure out what is currently unknowable, right? Mm-hmm. And that's what you're doing. That's what you just brilliantly said about, hey, John would say a thing, and what he was truly feeling was unknowable. So I was trying to get some more clarity, right? Yeah. In that moment, you've got to be your own SHME. This is unknowable. How can we get to know the truth about it? And in just asking that question, now you're having an empathetic conversation that no matter what that leads, you're connected. You're in the ride, right? You're not fixing anything. You're not judging anybody for anything, right? I'm in the car and we're both heading the same direction. That's all we really want,
Yeah. And, it comes down to curiosity and compassion.
Yep.
But we've got to be able to regulate ourselves to get there, right? I mean, it's easier said than done. And this is the practice of mindfulness, of awareness, of meditation, of presence, of self-compassion, of all the things. I know anyone listening, it doesn't just say, okay, just do this and then it's fixed, because then we still have to heal the repairs. But relationships are fucking hard. I had a podcast episode back in the fall when both my girls launched, and one was off to college, and one, my junior in high school, went off to Israel for a semester abroad in the same week.
Yeah, very nice.
And big week. Yeah. And then so motherhood is a mind fuck.
Yeah. Yeah.
And relationships are a mind fuck. Mm-hmm. And life is a masterclass. Like, I think that just sums it all up.
Oh, yeah, it is. It is. Well, folks don't understand, parenting as an adult, parenting is the one thing you can do that's going to open you up to the most shame in your life. It just is, because nobody does. There's no right way to do it. Nobody does it right, but everybody wants to tell you everything you're doing wrong,
Yeah.
And Parenting is an opportunity to invite you to feel shame every day of your life.
So I'm going to say two quick things before we wrap up about that is I do a lot of parenting talks, and I'll be honest, I love when I get parents to cry when I talk, because if I've tugged their heartstring that maybe they didn't do something so skillfully, then I know that I've impacted them, but not from a place of shame, but from a place of awareness, right?
Exactly.
But I have a lot of clients come to me who are like, oh, I'm fucking up my kids, I'm doing it wrong. And I'm like, look, the parent who is curious if they're fucking up their kids inherently isn't.
Right.
It's the parents who aren't even aware that the possibility of what they're doing is fucking up their kids are the ones that we need to worry about. If you're worried about it, you already are doing a better job than you think. Right.
If you're worried about it, you care, you give a damn. And
you're paying attention.
Right. So you're doing things out of love because it matters. That means you're not fucking it up. That is inherently what that means, right? Right. Yes. And kids are so much more resilient than you can ever know. They've got a reservoir that is untapped and untouched, and you can't, as long as you care, as long as you communicate to that in some way, whether it's giving them time so they know they're significant, giving them their attention, giving them, so they know that they are.
And are adults really any different-ish? We're all just little kids. Don't we all just want the same thing?
I got like a little Superman t-shirt on under my sweater right now. I'm like a 7-year-old. We need.
You know what? I had a doctor's appointment the other day, and all I wanted was a lollipop afterwards. I'm not gonna lie. I'm like, where's my lollipop? Why don't you give me a lollipop? Right.
And you don't get to make me feel ashamed, because that's the thing that I feel like I need right now in this moment. Right? It's the one thing I learned going through med school and being a psychiatrist, as complicated physically as our body is, right? The biochemistry that happens is phenomenal, right? It's the most perfect machine that you've ever seen. And it is amazing that it runs right. But when it comes to our emotions and how we show up in the world, we're extraordinarily simple. We really are. We overcomplicate it, but we're really not very complicated, right? Just need some time, some attention. Some days I need a hug. Some days I just want to hold your hand, right? That's it. And
we've just solved everyone's problems.
Done.
This is why you're on TV shows. I mean, this is why.
Right, done. And we just got it. Yeah, but the word is vulnerability, right? It takes us to be vulnerable and ask for the things you need. Tell yourself that that's what you need, right? And
that you're worthy of receiving it, right?
And believe that you're worthy of receiving it, right? And you got to believe it. And it takes practice, right? Just like meditation is a practice. Yoga is a practice. That reframing your narrative and restructuring what it is, who it is you think you are, and what you think you deserve because of it. It takes practice. You're not going to get it right all the time. And so be kind to yourself on the days you don't. I tell folks all the time, talk to yourself in those moments like you were talking to your best friend.
Yeah.
Right. What would you tell them? And then take a minute and tell that to yourself, and then move on.
Yeah. And really be mindful of that inner critic inside of us. I always say that our inner critic actually has a good message, just has really shitty delivery.
Right. Terrible.
They really want to support us. When, my inner critic gets mad at me for eating a bag of chips, my inner critic's just saying, hey, remember you wanted to eat healthy today. That's all.
Right. Exactly.
You've got to shift that narrative.
They would be the worst comedian ever. Horrible delivery. No timing.
Horrible.
Just everything is off.
Ish, I have thoroughly enjoyed talking to you. I could talk to you for hours. There's so much more. Same. This was a really, really great conversation. I know you've got so many exciting projects coming up. Share a little bit about where people can be able to find out more about you, connect, listen to you, watch you, hear you, all the things. What do you got?
You got it. So I'm all over social media. It's just my name, Dr. Ish Major, on Instagram, on Twitter, on Facebook. We have more marriage boot camp coming out on WeTV coming your way. We've got a really cool project with Nick Cannon, who's a whole nother conversation. Show's going to be called Counsel Culture. Right? Oh yeah, it's going to be called Counsel Culture. Think of it as The View, but an all male panel, and it's for Amazon, so it gets down So that should be coming out soon. So look for that. But yeah, just follow me on social, and it is me. I'm the one answering the comments, and I'm the one making the post. Dr. Ish Major, easy to find.
I love it, Ish. Thank you so much for your time. I again thoroughly have enjoyed connecting with you. I really appreciate you sharing your wisdom and your tools, and follow his stuff, because he has an infectious energy about him, and I really hope to continue our connection and conversation at some future point. Absolutely. So thanks again.
Absolutely. Thanks for the invite. You have to invite me back. I would love to come back.
I would love it. Absolutely. All right, everyone.
Thank
hope you guys got some good nuggets of wisdom on relationships and healing. If this episode spoke to you, we'd love a rating, a review, a share, so more people can journey forward to healthier and happier relationships, because ultimately that's all we want.
To continue your journey forward, find Jory Rose on Facebook and Instagram to become part of her growing community. You can also gain access to her meditations, books, online classes, or to sign up for an upcoming retreat. Visit her at joryrose.com. That's JOREEROSE.com.